love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out.
Hello, Miami. Thank you so much for watching 305 Sports Now. I am your host, Will, and my guest needs no introduction. He is on here to talk about what it was like on his end, which many of you already know, but what it was like on his end, dealing and watching the Virginia Tech game, and we're going to break down Cal from the team, also to the Cal algorithm as well. This gentleman, this young man, is the host of Locked On Canes and a writer for CanesCounty.com and an occasional host on WQAM. Ladies and gentlemen, none other than the GOAT of Canes content, Mr. Alex Donno. What's up, man? How you doing?
Thank you for having me, and I always appreciate when you introduce me as young man. It always makes me feel good.
Yeah, man. But welcome to your 40s, brother.
Yeah, I know. I just turned 40 about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I don't really feel different. I got a few more gray hairs on the beard.
Okay.
That's about it.
I give you 2 years. I'm 40. I'm 44, man. 4 years in, man. I'll give you 2 years. Then you start telling me I have this nick in my back.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm just joking around. All right, so you and I are lifelong Canes fans. We're also graduates from the University of Miami, and we take the team. We take the team to heart. I will say, in terms of how much we love it, how much we watch games, how much emotionally invested we get in. A lot of us predicted that Virginia Tech would get blown out. I felt like they could give us a game, but I thought they would get blown out. I will be honest. I predicted, I believe it was 42-17. That was my predictive score for that game. And one of the reasons why I predicted 17 is because Virginia Tech hadn't got to 30 against any top tier opponents, whether it was Rutgers or Vanderbilt. Lo and behold, they surprised us. Okay, of course there were some turnovers here that gave them a short field, and they had 14 points off of turnovers. But lo and behold, they surprised us. Scored 34 points. Kyron Jones managed the game well, but the running game really killed us. But you watching the game as a fan, that Saturday evening, I'm sorry, that Friday evening, what was going through your mind? And we were like, oh, crap. Is Georgia Tech all over again? Or did you think Miami's going to pull it out, or a little bit in between?
Yeah, I mean, I had lost faith at a certain point, probably after the second Ward interception, even though Elijah Arroyo made a tremendous play from the opposite end of the field. He ran 22 miles an hour to chase down what would have been a pick six, and that would have been a pick six, ironically enough, by a former Miami player, Caleb Spencer, who, was at Miami, transferred to Virginia Tech. So it would have been very poetic if he had run that in for a touchdown, I think. Thankfully, he was denied. And no, I mean, I definitely, I just reached this point in the fourth quarter where I just threw my hands up and said, anything could happen. We might lose this game. And, I wouldn't blame any Miami fan for feeling that way when you're down 10 points with, less than 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and your defense wasn't making stops. But then Cam Ward turned it on. I mean, you're never out of a game when Ward is your quarterback. And listen, I know he had mistakes that got Miami, partially into the mess that they were in. It wasn't just him, of course. The defense couldn't tackle anybody. Bashal Tutin was just running absolutely wild on Miami. But Ward overcame the 2 interceptions and the fumble by making some miraculous plays and throws. And some of those were miraculous catches. Xavier Restrepo from his back catches a ball on a 4th down, by the way. The improvisation where he got free of 2 sacks and then flips it over to Riley Williams, who was in the right place, right time, and he rumbled all the way down to the 2-yard line. He threw a real stiff arm, a fake stiff arm. You get a touchdown to Isaiah Horton, and then Horton at the other end was the guy who made the heroic play on the Hail Mary. But in terms of like that final play, because all throughout the fourth quarter, I was breathing heavy. My heart was racing. Like I was like panicking because that fourth quarter was so exciting, back and forth. And then as if it hadn't been enough excitement, after Miami scores, the go-ahead touchdown, they leave just under 2 minutes on the clock. Virginia Tech still has another chance to win the game with a walk-off touchdown. Yeah. And, they nearly got it. Now, I thought that their head coach, Brent Pry, I thought mismanaged that fourth quarter from, well, the third quarter as well, because I think that's when they went for that ridiculous fake field goal that Malik Bryant from Miami blew that play up. They just left 3 points off the board for no good reason. They were just trying to pile it on, and they paid for it. And then I thought Pry, didn't manage his timeouts. It was almost like he wanted it to come down to a Hail Mary, which is like a weird way to manage. I know you don't want to leave any time left on the clock for Miami, but at the same time, at least give yourself enough time to get down the field to give yourself a better chance to score. But then they still almost score on that, I guess, a 31-yard Hail Mary that they tried. And, what I saw when I was watching the play live was it didn't look like anybody actually caught it, but the ball also didn't really seem to hit the ground. So I'm like panicking in that moment because I'm like, okay, it's probably either a catch or an interception, but I don't know which at first. Right. And then, Miami player emerges with the ball. The stadium is celebrating. And then the referee throws up the touchdown signal. And then Virginia Tech starts celebrating. But the play is under review. Under review for 7 minutes, Will. 7 minutes they looked at that play. And I'm panicking the entire time. And then, listen, ultimately, I thought they got the call right because when you actually look at those replays, Daquan Felton never had control of the football. And then, they also bring into it the rule that a lot of people weren't aware of that, since it was actually Isaiah Horton who had switched over to defense for the final play, the receiver who, while the ball was not secure, he touched it while he was out of bounds, which automatically made it a dead ball and an incomplete pass. So I thought they got the ruling correct. And I don't care what anybody else thinks because most people think that they got the ruling correct. They just didn't like the way that they got there. Well, was there sufficient evidence to overturn it, or did it take too long and it was bad optics for the ACC? The most important thing should be getting the call right. No matter what the initial ruling was, no matter how long it takes to get there, I'd rather them get the call right. And that officiating crew is not good. Like, I'm not saying because they had a lot of mistakes on both sides throughout the game. Right. I mean, they took away a Miami touchdown that they probably shouldn't have. They took away a Virginia Tech touchdown, which might have been a little questionable as well during the officiating crew is not good, but I do think they got that final call correct.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I personally think they should have called it incomplete. That would have been probably the best way to go about it, because what really angers from what I've seen on X and other elements of social media is that the call is that they took a touchdown away. That's what really, I think, irks the V Tech fan. And they felt that it wasn't indisputable. So I thought they should have called it incomplete and then just, ruled it that it was Miami ball, whatever it is they wanted to rule. But I'll personally be honest with you, I really don't care, because Miami has been screwed in the past with calls like that. I just finished watching Catholics versus Convicts and the Cleveland Gary fumble. That was not a fumble. That was one. Let's not forget the national championship game. That was another one. Don Chaney Jr. was down, and all people can talk about is the knee. So I'm sorry. I don't care, to be honest with you. I think they got the call right. They should have just called it incomplete altogether. But what really irks me, and you shared this on X, was the so-called experts on ESPN saying that the referees got the call right, but they should have made that call.
Yeah, it's crazy. and I've seen this before, and it's this weird thing. And so again, like you said, maybe they should have just ruled it incomplete, or just like I get. Unfortunately, I don't think you can just rule nothing. And maybe that would have been like the right call. Might have been like, we don't know what happened. We've got to review it. We'll let you know. Instead, they felt like they had to review it one way or another. Because I experienced this as well as a soccer fan. Which they use replay, the VAR. And I've seen a lot of people say where even when the officials get a call right because of the VAR, they're like, well, they shouldn't have taken all that time they shouldn't have even reviewed that. They probably got it right, but it wasn't clear and obvious error. It's like getting the call right should be the most important thing, especially when you're talking about either a game-winning touchdown or, a touchdown, whether it counts or not. It's going to decide who wins that football game. Take as much time as you need, folks. Just get it right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Especially, if it takes 6 minutes, and I'm like, well, if it's quick, that usually means that the call was correct. So they just add it. But if it's 6 minutes, that means they're trying to make sure they got the call right. So looking at every angle. I mean, these guys get paid millions of dollars, and some of them were former players. So for them to just say, well, they should have never even reversed the call to begin with, even though they got it right, because they admit they got the call right. They just don't think it should have been reversed based upon what they saw on video, which makes no absolute sense to me at all. But whatever, it is what it is. Miami's 5-0. Vatek is 2-3. One thing I said to VTech fans when I did an episode a couple days ago is that it's not the end of your world. Okay, you lost one game, you just open ACC play. You're better than your record indicates. So it's not the end of your world. Okay, you just have to win. That's bottom line. And like Jimmy Johnson always said, never leave in the hands of the officials. And that's what we did as well. So that's one thing that we have to prevent ourselves. And speaking of that, there were some concerns in the game. So I want to get your take if you thought it was just an anomaly or if this is something that Miami fans should be concerned about. One of the things, well, first and foremost, Miami faced a team that has a running back that's going to play on Sundays. Tune is a beast. Okay, he's going to play on Sundays. And APR, right, Antoine Parrell Ryland is an animal. He's 7 sacks to end the game for the season. He's 252 pounds, a very quick defensive end. He's a first-round pick, in my opinion. So they really did go up in talent. 206 yards given up on the ground during this game. Is that a concern for you as far as maybe there's some kinks in Miami's defensive armor as far as stopping the run goes? Or was it just one of those games where Virginia Tech caught Miami on a bad night?
I think a little bit of both. I think that they showed some vulnerabilities in setting the edge and making tackles on the perimeter, and I think Virginia Tech figured that out and they milked it because you saw so many of those like outside pitches to Bashal Tootin, and it was really just stretching Miami's defense. I think tiring them out a little bit, sideline to sideline. So I think that's something like schematically that they probably need to. And that's above my pay grade. I'm not a defensive coordinator, but I would imagine that's something that they're going to address schematically, because if they don't, teams will try to exploit that again. Although not every team has Bashal Tootin caliber running backs. Although Cal has 2 good ones, including Jaden Ott, who's not had a good start to the season, but he's been banged up and he's coming off a bye week, so he's probably going to be healthier. So you need to tweak some of that stuff. But then at the same time, I think the part of it that's more easily fixable is it's been a few years since I've seen Miami tackle that poorly. Like it reminded me of like the last Manny Diaz year, first Cristobal year, ton of 20. I think it was, I've seen different places report a different number. It's either 20, 21 or 22 missed tackles, something along those lines, right? Let's say about 20 missed tackles, which was almost as many missed tackles as they had in their first 4 games combined in one game. And not all of that is schematics, because I saw a lot of arm tackling, some bad angles that were taken. I've said it a couple times this week, and I don't want to pile on this player because he's one of the best players on the team. But Kiko Maui Noah had a poor game, but I say that because I don't think he's ever going to play that poorly again. I think that was an anomaly. I mean, he was the defensive MVP last year. He was off to a great start this year. Miami's inside linebacker, so I think he's going to recover, and hopefully the unit plays with a fire under them this week, because they want to respond from I'm sure the film sessions this week, looking back at Virginia Tech, were not fun for them. So they want to respond and get a little bit more credit from their coaches for next week. So I think that part of it is something they'll probably fix pretty quickly. And I think that there are some fair concerns about the defensive backs. There were some blown coverages. There was some ball watching going on. You were going up against a quarterback, though, who's Cam Ward's cousin in Kyron Drones, and he's got a similar play style. Got out of the pocket several times, bought some time, made some improvisational plays, made some crazy throws. But the defensive backs weren't as good in that last game as they were the previous 4. So hopefully, you're facing a far different type of passing offense, more traditional this week against Cal, but hopefully they can get that right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Going back to Cam Ward, I will say this, though. I was proud at the response. And one of the things that I was proud is that Virginia Tech's defense is pretty stingy. They were only allowing an average of 160 yards per game per pass, per passing offense, one of the tops in the country. Again, a ferocious pass rush as well. APR was leading the nation in sacks. Picked up another one in the game, and Miami was still able to put up big time numbers against Virginia Tech. 343 yards passing for Cam Ward, 400 altogether, which includes his running, 5 total touchdowns. That's something that wouldn't have happened last year or years past. That you have a quarterback that's this efficient and this confident in his game as well. So, um, going with the running game just a little bit because the passing numbers have been outstanding this year. I'm with you. I do think that teams sell out for the run and try to stop Martinez and try to stop Fletcher, and which I don't understand why because Ward is obviously the strength of our offense. Do you think that Miami will gradually improve its numbers running the football moving forward, or do you think we're going to see more of the same from here on out, where Miami will maybe rush for 40 yards but throw for like 250 in the first half, and then maybe turn on the gas a little bit to grind teams out in the second half? Or do you think it'll be more balanced this time around? I think it's be more balanced. I do think that they're going to get more creative with the runs, and I think we will see Martinez break out, possibly against Cal, hopefully. But what's your take on it?
Yeah, I know what's been happening in these games. I don't think is by design. Like I don't think that they're like they're not like letting their foot off the gas in the first half from the running game. I think the issue has been it's been more on the offensive line. I think that it's been on the running backs. They have not graded out well as a run blocking unit. Like the pass protection has been overall excellent, but they're not getting enough push at the point of contact, and that was something that CC Maui Noah talked about earlier this week. That they need to be just more aggressive and more explosive at the point of attack and get more push on the O line because I think the holes have maybe been a little bit too slow to develop and few and far between. And they're aware of it. Like that unit is absolutely aware of it. At some point, whether it be this week or after the bye week, Jalen Rivers, their starting left tackle who hasn't played since the first game, who's an excellent run blocker, is going to be back at some point. So, I think it's been a little bit more even on the offensive line that it's been on the running backs now. I mean, at least thankfully, and you outlined it very well, Will, at least even though the running game has usually not worked in the first half, at least they've been able to get something in the second half to the point where I think Miami is like top 20 in rushing offense this year, number 21, something like that, even though they usually go into halftime with like 32, 38 yards rushing. They usually end up making up for that in the second half. But no, I mean, I think they would like that to get going sooner because it in the Virginia Tech game, it negatively affected them. Like I thought there were stretches in the second quarter when Ward was under so much pressure because Miami hadn't established a running game, and you were just able to, if you were Virginia Tech, just pin your ears back and go try to crush the quarterback. And then once Miami got the running game working in the third quarter, it looked completely different.
I'm gonna ask you now as a fan, Alex. This is my take as well. I think Miami lacks outside runs. That's one of the things that I think also kills against Virginia Tech. I think we have guys like Jordan Lau, who's strong as well, but could run it outside. We saw him bounce it outside against USF. You have also AJ Allen. You have Chris Johnson. Even Dave Martinez has some pep to his step. Do you think the Miami Hurricanes need to stop trying to run so much the football between the tackles and go a bit more outside to stretch the defense out a little bit more on the line?
Yeah, I agree, and don't just take our word for it because I was on a Spaces yesterday with Amon Richards, former Miami wide receiver, and he felt the same way. He said he thinks it's a little bit too much north to south, and they're not going east to west and stretching the field enough. And like you said, there's plenty of speed there. I mean, Miami's got super fast guys like Chris Johnson and Jordan Lyle. But like you said, Damian Martinez is not slow. Like, do not be fooled by his size. That is not a slow running back. So yeah, I would like to see them incorporate that more.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Moving on to Cal. Okay, I have to say one thing about Cal. I'm having fun with their fans. The Calgorithm on X has been absolutely hilarious. It's kind of nice to see a fan base not trash each other, per se, and just have a little bit of fun, with the differences in dynamics of the location of the fan base. But I think people are saying we should kill Cal, and I get it. I get it, but I do think Cal is a little bit better than what people are giving him credit for. First things foremost, they have a Miami quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, that I think is going to want to, from Columbus High, by the way, who's going to want to show out against his hometown team, per se, the Canes from Miami. They're a turnover machine. They turned over Auburn 5 times. They have 11 interceptions. I think that's number one in all of college football as far as interceptions go. Fernando Mendoza is a pretty decent quarterback. Although he's seen as a game manager, look at his numbers. He does have a pretty good arm, and they do have some playmakers at wide receiver. And like you said, they have a pretty good running game. Jaden Ott's been hurt, but he's been an effective running back. How should Miami attack Cal? And I also think he's basically attack Cal on offense and also on defense as well.
Yeah, they've got a their defense is very good. They've got a top 30 rushing defense. So it's if you I still think that this could potentially be a game that Miami gets the running game going, especially if Jalen Rivers is back at left tackle. But it's not going to be easy against these guys. Honestly, I think this is just going to hopefully be another magic show from Cam Ward. But maybe he's got to be a little bit more conservative than he's used to being, because like you said, it's hard to ignore Cal's takeaways. Now, like you said, so much of that was in the Auburn game when Peyton Thorne gave them a lot of gifts in that game, but he had trouble reading their coverages, and they disguised their coverages very well. Justin Wilcox, their coach, is very creative on that side of the football, so that it's possible Ward, who occasionally you'll get big turnover games from him, like it happened last week. So you've got to avoid that. This would be a great game to get the running game going, to take a little bit of pressure off. I just think Miami has so many weapons. It's going to be hard for Cal to deal with, because as good as Cal's passing defense has been as well, I think they're top 40 in that category. They haven't faced an offensive team like Miami. Like, if you're they lost to Florida State, who can't score. They gave up 2 touchdowns against Florida State. They were able to beat Auburn with a ton of takeaways forced. They haven't faced an offensive juggernaut like Miami yet. So I think Miami could maybe change their averages a little bit. I think on defense it's the usual formula. Cal is going to try to establish a running game the way that Virginia Tech did, but their offensive line, they've struggled. I know I was talking with a Cal expert, Lawrence Ross, who, he gave me a little context for it, that Cal has had a couple of offensive linemen that were banged up, and they may or may not be ready to play this week, coming off the bye week maybe. So they may get a few fortifications on the offensive line, but they've given up 16 sacks in 4 games, 13 of those in the last 2 games. Like their O-line has struggled to protect Mendoza the last couple of games. So with Miami getting Ruben Bain back this week, Cristobal confirmed that. I know some people don't believe him even when he talks about injuries, but I think Ruben Bain is going to be back this week. I think Miami's going to be able to apply constant pressure. And I think that's the most important thing here, is just to get in Mendoza's face. He's not going to be as dynamic with his legs as Kyron Drones was last week. So hopefully Miami can keep him bottled up, because I think that's going to be the key: pressure, sacks, tackles for loss.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that Mendoza is not as big as Kyron Drones, so they should be able to get him down a lot easier. One of the reasons why he was able to get some of his passes off is because he was such a big guy, not as a low to take down. Mendoza's not that guy either. So as well. So anyways, so we looked at Cal. We looked at the turnover aspect of things. One of the things that does bother me about ESPN as well is the fact they decided to make this a 10:30 game Eastern time, when a huge chunk of their fan base lives on the East Coast, and a marquee game in against Miami, they decided to make it at 10:30. What's your take on that? Do you think ESPN dropped the ball, or do you think that they're just trying to cater to the West Coast so everybody in the West Coast can watch that game? I don't know how the numbers is going to do over there compared to here, but what's your take on that as far as ESPN going so late?
Yeah, I think they want to cater a little bit to the West Coast, because and also they like to spread their games out, so they know, hey, we're going to have like big games in the noon window, 3:30, 7:30. If we can get a big game in the 10th, like they just want to like stretch their ratings out for an entire day. And Miami's been good for ratings this year. It's Cam Ward is must see TV. Miami nearly blew it last week, so people are going to have them on, upset alert again this week, wondering if Cal could take them down. I think they're also throwing a bone to Cal, because over there, they love those, like the formerly Pac-12 after dark, ACC after dark now. And since it's Cal's first time hosting an ACC game, I think they wanted to throw them a bone. It's like, all right, we're going to give you guys your favorite 7:30 Pacific time time slot. So I think that's why they're doing it. I think it's good for if you can get like solid TV ratings through like 1 a.m. Eastern time. I think you take that opportunity. It kind of sucks for us, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. Now that we're in an age of the what used to be the Atlantic Coast Conference is now the Any Coast Conference. All coasts. We're gonna have some start times like this now.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. So you're hosting the post game show on WQAM. It's more than likely going to end at 2:30. So I have a question for you. 5 hour energy,
4 o'clock post game till 4 a.m.
4 a.m. Oh wow. So I have a question for you, my friend. 5 hour energy or cafecito cubano? Which one?
Yes, both. All
Both.
all of the above. All of the above, because I love Cafe Cubano. That's probably how I'm gonna start my day and I'm gonna have like a strategic. I always drink one in the morning, after lunch, early afternoon, and then around halftime, I'm gonna take a 5 hour energy shot. 5 Hour Energy is now a great sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network, and they taste really good. So I'm just gonna kind of like spread my caffeine out throughout the day because I got to make it. And you know what? As long as it's a good game,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have enough adrenaline to get through a 4 a.m. post game. As long as if it's like a blowout, one way or another. Hopefully, a blowout. Miami win. I start to lose a little energy, but if
Yeah.
if it is like a close game, comes down to the fourth quarter, I'm gonna be pumped up on adrenaline. Like last week, not nearly as late, of course, but I think we went till 2 a.m. for the post game last week against Virginia Tech. I could have gone till 6 a.m. I was so wired after that.
Yeah. I think we all were. I mean, I think we all were. And because that was such an intense game against VTech, and it was. And I got so upset when Mish gave up that touchdown in the end zone. I mean, it
Yeah.
was I forget sometimes they're students, you know. It's one of the things. But I mean, that was a hard one for me. That was a hard one for me when Mish gave up that touchdown. But in the end, and listen, man, we won that game. I also had a little bit of trouble falling asleep. My wife was joking around and she's telling me that you're not going to bed at the Cal game. No, I think I might start falling. No, she's like you're definitely not going to sleep, especially if it's a
Well,
close game.
what's funny, and you and I, we were talking off air before
Yeah,
we started the show about like how early we usually wake up. You wake up
yeah,
you wake up at like 5 a.m. I wake up around like 7 a.m. most days. I woke up at 6:15 today, but after that Virginia Tech game, by the time I finally fell asleep, I slept like a baby, and I slept until 10:45 for the first time in I don't know how many years. Like I hadn't slept. And by the way, shout out to my wife for not waking me up for getting our son involved in some activity that morning so I could sleep in because that was clutch.
yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, no, I had trouble falling asleep too, but I like you. Once I knocked out, I was gone. It was a great feeling. I will say, winning that game, and I do think that was a good wake up call for Miami. But Virginia Tech has always played Miami tough, and I think people forget that. Oh, you lost. You almost no. Miami's glory years, even when they had those great teams with Mike Rump and Dan Morgan and then of course John Vilma and of course Sean Taylor. Virginia Tech always played Miami tough. I remember that they dropped. I think it was a 2 point conversion back in 2001 that would have probably given them a tie. Or I
Yep,
forgot the exact score. They
that's
dropped that
right.
2 point
No,
conversion.
exactly.
And that was
Exactly.
the 0-1 team, the greatest football team ever assembled in college football. And they almost lost to that Virginia Tech team and that Boston College team as well with William Green at running back. So listen, it's college football, and especially in the age of the transfer portal as well. You don't know who you're getting, or you're facing on the other side as well, because everybody now has good players.
Yeah.
We saw Thad Franklin at FAMU. He was a 4-star recruit out of Chaminade. So I mean, I think that's something to think about. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really appreciative of you coming on. I know you woke up a little early as well. Thank you so much. This show is pre-recorded. Let us know where we can find you, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you can find all my shows. We do a show every single day. Locked on Canes. You can find the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, and the video version, Locked on Canes, on YouTube. And I encourage you guys to check out our Thursday episode. Someone who he had joined us a couple times on Locked on ACC, which is the other show that I do. Check that out as well. But my go-to guy for all things Cal is Lawrence Ross, he's like an intellectual. He tours campuses across the country lecturing. He's been on CNN. He's an author. but he's a Cal alumnus and Cal football expert. And every time I talk to that dude about the Golden Bears, I learned something. And then he was nice enough to join me Thursday on Locked On Canes. So please check that episode out because you're going to learn a lot more about Cal after hearing Lawrence Ross. You're going to learn a lot more from Lawrence than you will from me about the Cal Golden Bears. That's for sure. So make sure you check that out. You can follow me on X at Locked On Canes or at Alex Donno, and follow my new TikTok account. I just started it about 2 weeks ago. We're gaining a lot of steam on TikTok. Will, are you on TikTok yet?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I think I'm too much social media for me, with X and so on.
Yeah, I just think TikTok. I mean, outside of the fact that I've sold my soul to the Chinese, they tell me because they got all my info now. But here, a couple things on that. I don't know if this actually helps the situation, but I have like an extra work phone, which is essentially a burner phone, and that's what I use to sign up for TikTok. So they don't. So hopefully they're not getting all my like the stuff that's on my main phone. Hopefully. But then the other thing is, like, I got to tell you, man, they're doing something right on that TikTok because every now and then I'll have a video on TikTok that gets like 10 times more views than I get anywhere else. It's like I had something that's like up to like 60,000 views on TikTok.
Really?
So what, assuming those are real numbers, I don't know who these people are that are watching it, but they're doing something right with their algorithm. Like they now have they're cloning me in some laboratory now with all of my personal information, but that their algorithm is great.
Wow, 60,000 a lot. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. So I think you're enjoying it being on TikTok then, because can you share the story? I'm sure we share pretty much the same listeners, but can you share?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story of how the whole idea of you wanting to be on TikTok came about? It was pretty interesting. You were approached by I think at the Gator game, right?
Yeah, I never wanted to be on TikTok. I'm still not sure if I want to be on TikTok, but here I am. But what happened was I met when I was in Gainesville for the Florida game. I met a lot of, by the way, the Canes fans traveled so well for that game. I met a bunch of Canes fans. Shout out to the Key West boys. Because there was like, this group of like 20 family and friends who come up from Key West for the games. They went all the way up to Gainesville. But like one of the Key West guys was like I don't know, like a 16, 17-year-old kid who was like, told me, oh, I'm a huge fan of your stuff. I watch it on TikTok. This was before I was on TikTok. So what do you mean you watch it on TikTok? So I guess there was people bootlegging my clips and putting them on TikTok. So I decided the only way to take the power away from the thieves was to actually join it myself and put my own content on there. So that was how I decided to get on there, because I realized, hey, if somebody's throwing my stuff on TikTok, I might as well do it myself.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a heck of a job, man, and I want to thank you again. I know that Benny, from you heard, called you a mentor, and I agree. You've been like a mentor to me as well. So I really appreciate you coming on. Been listening to you for years from WQAM, and now I'm an everydayer, like you call us, on Locked On Canes as well. So thank you so much for coming on and shooting the breeze with here on 305 Sports Now, talking some Canes, talking some Cals, talking some VTech as well, and even talking some TikTok as well. I thought that was pretty cool. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today yet again. Please subscribe to Locked On Canes right on his YouTube channel. I will tag him on this episode, so it'll lead you directly to his link. So please tag him on Locked On Canes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this show, before I go, I will be bringing back the segment Possible Canes. All right, Possible Canes. I will be covering the recruitment of Jason Lopez, the 4-star 2026 wide receiver out of Shamana Madonna. That episode will be airing Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right before. So you guys can start watching that and then get ready for the Cal game as well. So yes, Jason Lopez, the 4-star 2026 slot receiver out of Shamana Madonna. We'll be doing a special on him, and I'm working things out with him to even have him on the show as well to interview him as a recruit and potential Miami Hurricane. So guys, thank you so much. If you like this channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, hit that share button, guys. God bless. Go Canes. All about you guys. Bye-bye. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you.